It's a dangerous business going out your door. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no telling where you might be swept off to. You should look at the Asmus Toys, The Lord of the Rings, Bilbo Baggins 1/6 scale collectible action figure. The Bilbo Baggins 6-scale figure features an authentic and detailed, fully realistic likeness of old Bilbo from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Figure stands approximately 12 centimeters tall with over 22 points of articulation. The Asmus Toys online store exclusive also features a custom bush base, which is limited to 200 pieces worldwide. Every journey begins with a single step, and the first step we'll make in this review is to first thank the folks over at Asmus Toys that did provide this sample of Bilbo Baggins from the Lord of the Rings that we could have a look at in this video. They did also one better by providing the Asmus Toys online store exclusive Bilbo that comes with a very rare custom bush base, which is limited to 200 pieces worldwide. If you guys are interested and a big fan of Lord of the Rings and would like to get Bilbo for yourself, I can provide the link down below in the video description. Let's go ahead now and grab the tape measure just to see how tall Bilbo Baggins stands. And taking it right to the very top of his head, he's about 7¼ inches in height, or he's about 18½ centimeters tall. Well, maybe first what we'll do is have a look at the display base that comes included with the figure. The base feels like it's been cast in resin by the weight and just the texturing of the material that they would have used here. Underneath the base, though, flipping it up to further indicate that this is an online store exclusive. The only way, again, to pick this one up for yourself is to head on over to Asmus Toys' website. Again, I'll provide the link down below. They've numbered this one, the one that I have here at least, of 183 out of that very limited run of 200. Asmus has also taken the liberty of adding rubbery feet to the bottom of the base. That works sort of as a twofold. First of all, if you're putting the base down onto a surface, like a wood surface, for example, you really don't want to scratch the surface as you're moving the base around. But that little lip, the little gap that's been formed now by adding these rubbery feet, leaves just enough space that if you do happen to slide this around, you're not running the risk of rubbing that number off. This figure doesn't come included with a certificate of authenticity, but it has at least the number on the bottom of the base that will tell you what number it is out of that 200 limited run. As for the actual base itself, the middle section feels coarse like sandpaper, and you've got some boulders on the side. You've got a tree that has long since been cut down, and like again, the texturing on this is sort of like a coarse grit sandpaper. The foliage is really nicely handled here. You've got green leaves, you've got vines. There's several different berries as well. As you look closer in there, you can actually see they've added all these little drops of color just to break that up a little bit. What I do like about the green, though, is that it's handled in such a way that it's not all the same green either. All the leaves are unique to one another, and all the colors that they've used aren't all the same green. So you have some lighter greens leaves here next to the more darker vines. It's, again, a really nice looking display base. It doesn't give you much of a footprint, though, to work with. As I put this down, I'm just going to put Bilbo on top of it. His large feet, obviously being a hobbit and all, it means that the figure's going to have only just a little bit of space to work with when it comes to him standing on top of the base. The figure also doesn't have ankle articulation, which we'll talk a little bit later on into this review. So that's also going to cause a little more problems when it comes to this guy standing properly on the display base. Again, you've got very little less of a footprint to work with. And non-articulated feet, you will want to make sure that you're balancing Bilbo just right. One thing I also did want to show you guys is the instruction guide that they included with this. It's been done in a parchment paper fashion that actually does look like something that Bilbo would have carried around with him or had on his shelf with all the rest of his memoirs. On the front it says Bilbo Baggins, 1/6 scale collectible action figure, Asmus Toys, of course, up the top corner. This actually, by the way, was flipped the other way around, but I closed it like this so it actually looked more like a newspaper, or again, like an old parchment paper. On the inside, it shows you just all the things about changing out the various head sculpts, changing out the different jackets, how to attach things onto his pack, his backpack. and of course all the other accessories that come included with it as well. On the back, there is the QR code, not something that would have been around in the Shire, but something you, of course, you can scan for yourself if you want to go over to their website or if you want to go over to their Facebook as well. Asmus has done a fine job to pack along with Bilbo all the various things he packs for himself before he leaves the Shire. Starting first, the figure comes included with the red-bound book. I believe he does put this book immediately in his pack, but we don't really get the chance to see inside the book. But thanks again to the company who are making such an elaborate book like this, not only can you see the leather-bound front and back to the cover, there's also a little BB down below for Bilbo Baggins and some really interesting scroll work, but it does kind of feel like it's a leather-like material that they would have used to bound the book. But the nice thing about it, though, is that this book also does open up. And I want to make sure I flip to the right page here. There's a couple of pages, of course, you may recognize right away from the movie, including the Balrog down below here. No, not the first time that Asmus has done this. They, in fact, actually did this as well with the Evil Dead Ash Williams. Remember the Necronomicon Ex Mortis? Impressed to see that figure also included a bound book that could have flipping pages. And it's nice to see that they also did the exact same thing with Bilbo Baggins, even though really we only see him pulling out the book, and I believe he packs it right away. The idea that they would have actually gone the mile of actually, well, again, there's a few pages. There's one many of us may recognize right away. But each one of the pages are unique to one another. Any other company simply could have just made the book like this, just permanently molded, not one of which you would be able to open up. But the fact that they actually did do that, now 2 times with figures we've looked at on this channel, again, I'm just super impressed with the fact that they would have gone the mile of making an actual bound book. I'll put that to the side. By the way, the book can fit inside the pack. The pack is right over here. We're going to look at that also in a second. The figure also comes included with a smoking pipe. The pipe itself is very thin plastic, so we'd be careful of that. It's got some nice brown with some additional darker brown where the smoke would have come out the end of the pipe. He also has some dedicated hands for this. One thing I do like also is the hands that they gave him. Other than the mug hand and the ring hand, all the hands are mirror flips. So he gets one for this side, and he gets one for that side, and that's all the same with all the other hands except for the ring hand and the mug hand. We're getting ahead of ourselves. But he does also come with these hands for holding the pipe. All that's really involved is to take the pipe and wedge it in between the 2 fingers. And you can see it sort of just rests underneath his thumb. And it's really stable, actually. I was really surprised to see how well this held the pipe. I actually started the review by having this in his hand. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that when it comes to wrapping up the review. Of course, I'm really going to change things up a little bit. And like I said, he does come with 2 hands. So if you'd rather have it on this side or this side, at least they do have you covered with both hands for either side. The figure also comes included with a travel mug. The mug itself is mostly brown, although it's more medium brown in the middle and then darker brown on the top and the bottom. While there's no necessarily liquid on the inside of it, it's certainly something he can still carry around with him because he comes included with this hand. Now, this hand is only for this side of his body, and when you are attaching it, you really don't even need to rely on all the 4 fingers. It's only really the top 2 that do the job of holding the mug. Simply just take the 2 fingers and wedge it inside the handle. And as you can see, Bilbo can carry around his mug with him. I believe when he's actually leaving his house at the beginning of the movie, he actually has the mug over here as he's carrying it around as he's leaving the Shire. There is not actually a section here that can hook the mug or the mug can hook onto. But you can also open up the strap here, which I'll do in a second, and you could technically put the mug in there. You could just have it dangling, like the next accessory we're about to have a look at. The figure also comes included with his pot. The pot is darker down below, where of course it would be sitting on the fire, and like the mug, there's no liquid on the inside of the pot, but it does have at least a working handle. I do really like the coloring that they've added to this. More of a darker, kind of silverish gray, but again, you've got these really nice dark stripes, where the heat would of course burnt and tarnished the outside of the edge of the outside surface of the pot. And again, I think when he's actually leaving, he hooks it onto here. Even the instructions actually indicate that you can take the travel pot and actually just loops this. Just involves, actually, you know what, I'll do it right now. You can just unloop this. First of all, the travel pack does have a blanket. We'll slide that out first. The blanket does not open up, though. There's no open end of it. It's basically just sealed shut. But it's a nice soft blanket. You can put that to the side. And of course, you can take the strap here and open this up. Such small things to be working with here, but you just open this up like that. Open this up like that. And then in the inside of it, there's all this batting. Now, technically, you could take the batting all out if you really wanted to. It's going to make for a much looser bag, mind you, but then you can go ahead and take the red bound book and just fit that inside the bag, which is likely what I'm going to be doing anyways. And then for the pot, you can just take the pot and end it to the end of or add it to the end of the strap, and then just reverse the steps and strap that back together. which I'll probably do near the end of this video, just to show you guys what it looks like in closing thoughts. The figure also comes included with his walking stick. Now, he does have, again, hands for that. So, again, right now, I've only got relaxed hands. Not really going to be doing much of anything. But he does have closed fists of an open variety. So, again, I'm just going to show you the difference between the two. He comes with fists that look like this. Now, there's a hole in here, but it's not going to be doing much of anything because there's no hole that goes to the other end. Then there's this one that's pretty much the same hand, but it has at least a hole that goes to all the way to the other side. You take then the walking stick. Make sure, of course, you got it facing the right way. And feed that all the way through so you can have Bilbo with the walking stick. I think he has it on this side, but just in case that's not the case, you can actually have the hand on this side too and just simply switch around the accessory to what side you'd like to have it. The figure also comes included with a couple of hand pegs, more just there in case you break any of them or you happen to lose one of them. You got a couple of extras to work with, nothing wrong with that. And then finally, the figure comes, at least for accessory-wise, before we get to his swappable head. He comes, of course, with a hand that has the ring. When we see him in the beginning, he's celebrating his birthday, slips the ring on and proceeds to disappear until Gandalf's more the wiser, realizes where he's gone to. Now, this is a nice ring to have already on the hand, where you don't have to worry about the ring being lost. I kind of wish that they could have also, let's just see if I can grab a ring. I'm going to grab a hand here to illustrate what I'm talking about here. Kind of when he's inside his house and Gandalf is talking about him surrendering the ring, he's sort of holding and nursing the ring in between two of his hands. I wish there was actually a secondary hand that had a ring already in his fingers, where if you could take, I'm just going to go and grab at the other, just these hands here. If you had actually a hand that had a ring attached to the end of the two fingers, you could have actually had it looking as if Bilbo's reluctant to hand over the ring. That's one other thing I kind of wish that he could have included. But still nice to see that they gave you a nice, very shiny gold metallic ring on the end of his finger. I'm going to put those all to the side. Then, let's go ahead and move on to the other things the figure comes included with. The still frightening to see scene in the movie, of course, is the part when Bilbo turns around and he's got this frightful face. I remember jumping the first time I saw this in the movie theater. And, ever since all the subsequent watches of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, I always freak out at the same time. It's whenever he has this, just literally, just turns around. He's got this shrieking face. Nicely handled, I will say, on the part of Asmus. I mean, the head sculpt is really nicely done. Sort of has developed a bit of a fangs down below here and a big shrieking face, shrieking expression on his face. Hair's nicely sculpted there as well. And again, you can pop the head off and replace it with this head if you so wish. Just a quick one last look at this. I really like the eyes on this one. Both the eyes on this head sculpt and the head sculpt that we're about to have a look at. There's a lot of life going on in this face. It's a little strange, yes, the fact that there's no body attached to it. Literally, all it is just a case where you're going to pop the head off the ball joint, like that, and then you're going to go ahead and just pop the new head in place. And while it is not completely in there, mind you, while it's nice to see that they actually include this head sculpt, I'm definitely going to still be sticking with the idea of this. Now, the only thing about it, though, is when you are putting the head back in, you will want to be careful of the tie that he has in the shirt collar. Because both of which, when you're popping the head back onto the ball joint, you may want to even get yourself a pair of tweezers, for example, and fish the collar back out. Like I've got one side right now that's a little more reluctant. Okay, I think it got all the way out there. But yeah, you may want to take yourself a bit of tweezers and just sort of fish those back out once you switch the heads out. The last thing the figure comes included with, like right now, he does have his birthday jacket on. And I got to say, first of all, I'm really impressed with the material that they went with here. It sort of has like a suede type of material feel to it. And it does have a really well-polished, well-tailored look to it. I mean, even the inside of the jacket is finished just as much as it's finished on the outside. Bilbo also does have a snapped-up vest, which of course you can technically open up to if you want to. And just underneath that, carefully opening this. Underneath that, he's got his shirt. A little bit of extra padding has been added in there as well. And then he does have his tie. Again, just to do everything back up here. The figure, as I snap this back in right now, figure, like I said, does have his birthday jacket, and the jacket looks really, really nice. Just again, the pattern work of what they chose for this green here looks really sharp on the figure. There is also the alternative too. If you would rather have Bilbo look the way he leaves when he's ready to leave the Shire, there's also this brown coat too. And again, just as well as the birthday jacket, there's a really nice tailor. It's not as finished on this one as the birthday jacket, but still a really nice tailored suit here, suit jacket. There are some pockets. Not that he technically has a ring to fit inside the pocket, but at least he does have this jacket as well. For me, at least, I think when it comes to displaying the figure, I'm probably leaning more to the idea of going with the brown jacket. Although at times in the movie, when we're seeing this scene, it almost seems to have more of a forced dark green color. And then other times, it looks more like this brown. They clearly went, in this case, the direction of brown. But it does look quite good. And I'll get this on Bilbo here in a second. Again, my long-term plan for displaying this figure, thank again, because of the fact we do have an actual pack that does open up, is to probably put the red book in there. I'm going to put like the pots on the end of it. Maybe I'll even put like the mug there as well. And I'll put the brown jacket on Bilbo when it comes to displaying him. I took the liberty not only of unjacketing Bilbo, because we're going to put on his travel jacket in a second, but I also took the liberty as well of unstrapping the front of the belt, and I took then the pot and the mug that he has, and I looped them on the bottom. So what I essentially did was I just unstrapped the belt here, and then with this being now open, I just fed first the pot, then I fed on the mug. The instructions really only to show you that the pot's the thing that goes on the bottom, but because there really is no other place for him to carry around the mug, I just decided to make an executive decision, and I just looped the pot and the mug down below here before strapping it again shut. I've also then slid the blanket in the inside, and the book, although you can't see it right now, is actually inside the pack. So it really has everything he needs except for the walking stick and the pipe, and I can put those in his hands later, a little bit later. This, of course, is going to fit around his arms, but just before we actually do that, I'm going to put that to the side. I have also taken the liberty of unjacking. I did technically remove his hands there as well, so if you notice that he's missing hands, we'll go back to that also in a second. But I did also take the jacket off because I did want to show you guys the work that they actually did to tailor a really fine-looking shirt there as well. Again, I've already taken also the liberties of plugging these back in, these little snaps, shutting then the vest so you can see what it looks like all the way around. Because obviously from the back with the jacket on, you'd never be able to see anything that's going on here. And even for the fact that they did put the adjustment strap on the back to tighten the vest if you wanted to, again, is a nice touch on their part. Now, he does have these little pockets. The pockets really aren't functioning. There's just little flaps on the sides. Let's go ahead and take his jacket and just bring his arms back a little bit here. And then we're going to go ahead and just feed, probably getting the right sleeve helps. We're going to go ahead and feed the sleeves of his arms into the sleeves of the jacket. Now, while you are doing this, though, first of all, you want to make sure that everything's lined up properly. But one thing you may also have to do, too, is once it's on his arms, you're going to have to probably go in there and then fish back out the sleeves for his shirt. Because now the sleeve is a little more, well, it's pulled back up here. You're definitely going to want to pull those back out to get them properly in place. Got Bilbo's brown jacket on, but I'm actually going to hold off putting the pack, I think, on right now, just because it's a lot easier to actually show you guys the articulation on the figure if I don't have the backpack on his back. This is going to come back, though, in final look, so stay tuned for that. Though getting a closer look at the defaulted head sculpt for Bilbo, short of maybe the fact that the figure's head is a little on the more sadder side, the other extreme to that, of course, is giving him this head sculpt instead. And we've already seen it's easy just to pop the one off from the ball joint and replace it with the other. But I think for long-term displaying it, while it's nice to see that they included this head sculpt, as scary as it may be, I think I'm probably more leaning to the idea of displaying him with this head. Yes, it's a little more on the sadder side, but I gotta say, like, the likeness is quite handled well here. It's a very more older looking Bilbo, later into his years before he's leaving the Shire to go on his own adventures again. I mean, again, that the way they've handled the wrinkles and the way that skin would naturally start to sag when you get a little bit older in your life. Even down to the idea that actually moving his tie out of the way, you can actually see there's some looser skin just on his neck there as well. The paint is handled really well here too. I mean, again, the only thing I would say, not as a criticism necessarily, but the head seems so sad. I would have maybe wanted to give him a little more expression. I mean, again, I get the idea. He obviously is a little more older, but maybe just a smile or something on his face. He seems certainly wiser now, having lived the adventures that he did. The hair is nicely handled, too. The hair not only takes up really the majority of the head. I mean, it covers most of his ears, so it's a little harder to make out his ears. But the hair is also painted in two colors of gray. Mostly the darker gray, and then you've got the brushing of, or just touching lightly of the lighter gray over top of it. Again, just adds a lot of depth to the character's face. I like this head sculpt, just though wish he was maybe a little bit happier. It's kind of hard to say because we only really see him at the beginning of the movie, and again, we only really have the prior Hobbit trilogy to kind of know what Bilbo would have been before he got this age. But again, I'm really, really happy. Really, no complaints really necessarily at all when it comes to the sculpting or the paint. I just think he's a little on the sadder side. Now, we already looked at the jacket. We've already looked at the vest. Of course, we already looked at the shirt and the tie that's underneath. We haven't really looked at his pants yet. His pants do sit higher as they would in the movie as well. The pants, I've noticed they've actually made them pretty tailored tight to his calf. So you really can't roll them up too much. Not that you really would be rolling them up at all anyways. And of course, the one notable trait about a hobbit is his big, giant, hairy feet. Details I do like that Asmus did was, first of all, adding fur to the tops of his feet. If they had just simply sculpted this in, it would have looked like just sculpted plastic painted. By doing that with real hair, or the closest thing to that, it actually gives you a more real-world look to the hobbit's feet. I'd hate to see somebody's feet that actually has this much hair on it. And then on the bottom of it, because a hobbit's not likely wearing shoes, he's walking around all the time on the Shire or any one of his adventures, just with his bare feet. So of course, it would make perfect sense for the figure to have dirty feet. And I'm glad to see that they went even that extra mile. I mean, they could have easily just assumed that no one is really going to have... I mean, if you're going to put a figure on a shelf like this, not many people are going to go like this and check the bottoms of his feet. But the fact that they did actually paint the bottom of it is a really nice touch. Nice touch on their part. Okay, for the articulation here for Bilbo Baggins, whether you decide to use this head or, again, this head right here, both the heads sit on the ball joint the exact same way. So you can twist the head back and forth this way, up, and down. Thing about it, though, is you're just going to want to be careful because the head is so close in quarters to the collar and the tie. If you start rotating it this way, I find it starts to tug on the collar. And the last thing I really don't want is to have that tie come loose. So while you can twist the head technically all the way around, I probably wouldn't advise it. You can still have the head looking up, yes. You can have the head looking down, and of course you can have it moving back and forth. Shoulders do come out. I did notice that, like on this one at least, like the shoulder on this side is a little on the more tighter side. But the shoulder not being tight on this side, you can still see that the figure does have a 90-degree angle bend. You can move the arms forward, you can move the arms back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. There's the bicep here. There's a single hinge, or double hinge, I should say, on the elbow. It's a little harder, kind of, obviously, to see with the sleeve, but he has a double hinge. There's a joint there and a joint there, so he does have actually a double hinge, and the hands rotate all the way around. The upper torso, even though it is padding, technically does have its own ball joint. The legs do split out. You can take the legs and move them forward and move them back. There is a swivel at the top of the thigh, elbow, thigh, and then the figure does have a single hinge in the knee. The thing about it, though, is the figure doesn't have ankle articulation, which is something I started talking about at the beginning of this video. I don't know how you would necessarily feel when it comes to ankle articulation. On the one end of it, ankle articulation would give him a little bit more stability, especially when it comes to him standing on the Shire display base. Unfortunately, though, if you did very obviously add a joint, it would break up the molding that they've already put, the sculpting that they worked so hard to put on the lower end of his feet, that, yeah, if you were to put a joint in here, maybe it would give a little more adjustability, but it would also ruin the sculpting from this point to this point. You would see a big, very noticeable joint, and obviously would just ruin the ankles completely. I kind of lean more to the idea that the figure looks better, obviously works a lot better, without the ankle articulation. It does, though, mean that you have to kind of compensate it when maybe it comes to, well, you can also swivel them this way, too. So that's one thing that also works to your aid when it comes to displaying the figure. Yes, he doesn't have necessarily ankle articulation, but if you have the ankles twisted and the legs turned just the right way, as you see right there, the figure doesn't really have too much problem when it comes to him standing. He might have a little more of a harder time to stand when, again, we bring back in the display base. Display base I've actually got just over here. When again we bring back in the display base, which once again is an online exclusive. This is the only time where you kind of see the regret of not having ankle articulation, because again, like, the figure is going to have a little less of a footprint to work with. But other than that, I mean, like, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. The somber look on his face is a little more on the saddening side, but again, he's had quite a lot of adventures in his life. And I think Asmus Toys has done a bang-up job on giving us a Bilbo Baggins a little later in his years, but a fine-looking Bilbo nonetheless. Sticking to the promise made, here in final looks, Bilbo Baggins wearing now his brown coat and his pack on his back. The pack actually was pretty easy to fit over his arms. You just bring the arms back and make them straight, and then literally just slide the straps of the pack up the shoulders, and then just bring his arms back down. What you may not see, though, is inside the pack is actually his red-bound book. And once again, impresses me the fact that Asmus Toys actually include an actual bound flippable page book, something that they've already done before with their Ash Williams from Evil Dead included. Remember that Ex Mortis, Necronomicon Ex Mortis, when actual flipping pages. Some of the pages being the size of the font are a little harder to read for obvious reasons. reasons, but you'll notice some of the recognizable faces and images inside as the journeys Bilbo had in the original trilogy Hobbit. Now, one thing also I really like about this figure is that technically all of the accessories the figure comes included with can be carried around with the figure. I mean, the walking stick is in his hand, and on his pack is both his pot, his mug, and his blanket. There's technically one thing I didn't actually include with this, and that is smoking pipe. There is technically enough space on the inside of the pack to carry both the bound book and the pipe, but because the pipe is such thin plastic on the handle, I really didn't want to run the risk of that snapping. So instead, I think what I might end up doing, so he can actually carry around literally everything with him, I might just end up putting the smoking pipe in his other hand, adjacent to the walking stick he has in the one. Details I really like about this figure are, first of all, the head sculpt. I think not only have they given us a true aged-looking Bilbo as he would have appeared in the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring, but the paint is handled really well here on this figure too. I did mention, though, earlier in the review that he does have a bit of a sad face. I guess you could consider that not only just sad, but also wise. Bilbo has had quite a lot of adventures over the span of his life, with still more adventures to follow as he leaves the Shire, that maybe it's not as sad of a face as it's just a wise face. And that's the same face I'm sure many of us will have when we've lived the life that Bilbo has had. He's probably just happy to be alive. The sculpting of the hair is also handled well here with two different colors of gray, the darker and the lighter gray, so it gives a nice little level of depth. And once again, Asmus has really impressed me with the amount of tailoring that they put into the clothing. I mean, when you really think of these figures are, after all, 6-scale figures, but when you look at the outfits, the jacket, the vest on Bilbo, the shirt that we did look at, not as much time maybe spent as the jackets, and even like the birthday coat, the birthday jacket that we took off at the beginning of this video, all of them look like 1-to-1 scale jackets, scaled down. And that's, again, a testament to the amount of work and care that they put into these pieces, that everything from head to toe, as hairy as those toes may be, look finished and they look high quality. Now, again, one thing I really like also about this figure is that they did put fur on the top of his feet. As awkward and gnarly as that may look to actually have fur on top of feet, that's the way it looks also in the movie. Now, with Bilbo, I think if they had just sculpted the hairs on his feet, say in plastic, you could paint it as well as you could have, but it would still look like molded plastic. I'm glad that they actually did use real hair, or, you know, the equivalent to real hair, and actually glued it to the top of his feet. And even went the mile of actually painting the bottom of his feet, because, of course, those feet are going to get dark, dirtier, and dingier as he's walking around the Shire. A great, great looking figure, though. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Asmus Toys that did provide this sample of the Fellowship of the Ring Bilbo Baggins 1/6 scale figure that we can have a look at. Once again, they did provide the one that came included with the custom base. Now, this one is very limited. I don't have the custom base here in final looks because I didn't want to off-kilter him, especially with him with the walking stick in his hand. But if you guys are interested and want to get the one that has the custom base, it is very, very limited. I can't stress that enough. Limited to only 200 copies worldwide, and it's available over on their website. The price point for this guy is actually $195, which can't beat that at all. The figure is slated to release Q2 2022, so he's probably just going to be dropping, I would imagine, any time now. If not, he has already dropped. And again, if you guys are interested and would like to get this one for yourself, I'll certainly provide the link down below in the video description. You can head on over to Asmus Toys and not only pick up Bilbo Baggins for yourself, but the other wide range of different Lord of the Rings figures that they've been producing all this time. It's really cool figures over there. Definitely check it out if you have a little bit of time. If you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and certainly want to stick around for the journey that we have ahead of us, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. Popping up also at the very end of this video will be a playlist of other Asmus stuff that I've looked at over the years, with many more to follow. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.